Joined now by former Vancouver Canucks defenseman and TSN hockey analyst. It's our Thursday regular, Mr. Frank Corrado. How you doing, Frankie?
Excellent. How you guys doing?
Yeah, A-okay.
Yeah.
Well, just before we get into the Vancouver Canucks, as we talked about, it was a crazy deadline. All the good stuff happened, and then Friday came around, and it wasn't quite as action-packed. How was your first experience on Trade Center?
It was good.
Amidst all the hilarity.
It was good. There were some rumblings that I may had to take a rookie lap around the studio. I'm happy we didn't do that. But yeah, I spent the day, basically, I started early on TV. We did a hit on the Bruins and their season, and then I went over to do radio for most of the day. Came back just around the deadline, around 3 o'clock, told a little story about my day getting traded, and then went back to do Overdrive and had a Habs panel that night at 10 p.m. for a real barn burner. It was the Habs versus the Anaheim Ducks.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I got home for a bit, came back to the studio for that, and I don't know, I'm sure you guys don't pay attention to this, but we had what's called thunder snow.
Yes,
so I've heard of this.
We
yes,
had thunder snow that night, so getting home from the Habs Anaheim game was really fun. Really fun. Yeah.
After that storied rivalry, Habs Anaheim.
Oh, look at this. Rookie broadcaster now starting to complain, Blake. He could have had the Ducks and Canucks last night, which was a good sleep aid, if nothing else. We want to start, and for those who don't know, Frank played under Rick Tocchet in Pittsburgh some moons ago. We want to talk about Tocchet here and the effect he's had on some of the players, particularly JT Miller. Our Bodog poll question, has he fixed JT Miller? But you tell me what you're seeing at a number 9 for the Vancouver Canucks in his time here under Tocchet.
Yeah, okay, so I would start with, I think he looks a little more assertive. Right, it just seems like he's willing to initiate things a little more, whether it's getting on a puck first or kind of getting himself to some open space. It's like he's proactive rather than reactive. And to say that Rick Tocchet fixed JT Miller implies that he was broken. I don't know if he was ever broken. I can tell you that he runs very hot and he gets frustrated, and he kind of shows that, as we've all seen this year. But when JT Miller was playing well, even under Bruce, he was still a very good player. Maybe now you see it a little more consistently under Rick Tocchet, but I have a hard time with saying that he's fixed now. Maybe the language that Tocchet uses, maybe the tone he uses, maybe he's able to communicate to this guy a little better. And that's not a slight on Bruce Boudreau. I spent the whole day with him at Trade Center talking to him in the green room. He could talk for hours, and he was great. The insight that he shared and, all the kind of behind the curtain kind of stuff he could tell you. And even just talking about the game, he's very knowledgeable, very informed. So it's sometimes it's just a little bit about how the message is being sent, the tone, the verbiage, all that kind of stuff. Maybe Rick Tocchet knows how to get through to this guy a little bit better, but it's a small sample size, right? Like, when...
It's the lastiness that you need.
That's the thing.
Right?
You need this to last a long time. And when Bruce came in, everyone was playing great. Bruce, there it is. Team was awesome. JT Miller was a big part of that. Top 50 player in the NHL, no doubt. So it'll be about how can you continue that for the long run here if Rick Tocchet is going to be a part of the solution in Vancouver.
Tocchet is the second straight head coach here who has called Miller his second-line center. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not going to play some wing. Boudreau certainly had him on the wing at one point. And many think, hey, he's better on the wing. It's an easier game. He's able to forecheck, and there's not the same defensive responsibility. Where are you positionally on Miller? And Frankie, we have seen a lot of teams go to basically hybrids where one guy takes the face-off and then flips on over and plays the wing, and somebody else steps in and plays the center ice position. Where are you on that as a method, as a model?
I'm more with JT Miller as a winger. I am. I just feel like you can get the best out of him. And we talked about the fire and the passion, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, let's say he gets frustrated from time to time. But the emotion in the game, I think you can channel that better for JT Miller as a winger. And I'll give you an example. Last night in the game, it was the first goal. I think it was Troy Terry, the first goal. And I'm watching the forecheck, and JT Miller, he's not the first guy. He had a good shift. It was a good shift. but he wasn't the first guy in on the forecheck. And I see him dive down into that role, and then puck kind of gets broken out. It goes into the Canucks zone. One thing leads to another, and it's in the back of the net. But I was thinking right there, like, that's a situation where JT Miller is going to thrive a little more being a winger, kind of being that first guy into the fight rather than having to lay back and kind of be a little more conservative. I just think you channel him a little better when it's a little more giddy up and go, up in your face instead of, hanging back. And I think he's excellent on faceoffs, so why not have him as a guy who takes faceoffs from time to time? You think you want to get a win on a certain side, offensive zone, and you put him there. But I like his game matches up more for a winger than it does for a centerman.
And, of course, when they did the 6-4, the lotto line several years ago, Elias would flip over and play the middle ice after JT took the draw. Sorry, Blake.
Yeah, when he had a sore wrist, yeah. Sidebar to all of us, that encapsulates this. How much do you think mood affects your game on a night-to-night basis? We talk about mental health a lot, and that's an important thing. But, the lighter version of mental health is just your mood. And if you're having a shitty day, do you have a shitty game? Is it guaranteed? Can you do exercises before the game to put to rest all the crap that you dealt with earlier in the day, whether that was family, whether that was your dog pooping on the rug? Is that overrated, underrated? What do you think?
Well, it's certainly not overrated. I would say it's underrated. There is a human element to every player,
right?
And everything.
We think that you're robots, but you're not. Right?
No, they're not robots. Yeah. If you're having a bad day, there's certain days you wake up and you've traveled and you've played games and you've practiced and all these things, and you kind of wake up and you're like, ooh, this is going to be a tough one. I do not have it today, right? And every once in a while, it's a great game. It's not automatic that you're going to have a bad game, but 82-game season, you go back to training camp and the grind everyone goes through, and it's not like guys are taking months off in the off season now. Like it seems like it's a constant grind. So if you're having a bad day, it really is, and this is what kind of separates some players from others, is the fact that not that they can separate a bad day from a good game, it's the fact that they can find ways to minimize damage in a game like that when they know they don't have it. It's like they have this other kind of game that they can play where they understand it, they don't fight it, and they just say, okay, this is my game tonight, and I know if I do this effectively, maybe there's going to be an opportunity for me offensively where I can break through, but I'm going to have to be a little more patient. And there's a lot of thinking involved in that. I know there was a lot of days where, whether it was AHL, NHL, Europe, you just wake up and you're like, this is going to be a grind today. I got to find a way to get through it. The quicker you accept that and realize there's another way you can play to have success for yourself and your team, the better you are and the longer you stick around.
The micro version of that is just how you manage immediate failure. In golf, we always talk about leaving the bogey behind. In Matt's case, the triple bogey behind on the last hole. And moving on, right? JT Miller seems to carry his foibles or his line's foibles. And there's been a couple of loud examples of this where he's having a bit of a temper tantrum on the opposition blue line while the other team's striking down and getting a chance or a goal. Are a lot of his defensive foibles maybe a little bit of that? He carries too much weight of what's just happened and he's not getting back.
Well, I wonder, because I'll tell you how I was when I played. I was really, really hard on myself, right? And then so if I knew I messed up 2 shifts ago, I had a hard time. I would get really self-conscious about it. And it would fester in me, and I couldn't let it go. Playing in the NHL, being in the NHL meant way too much to me to just be like, just let it go, man. It's over now. And with JT Miller, I wonder if it's a little bit of that. Like, he holds himself to a certain standard.
He's a perfectionist.
And then when he sees other players mess up or not do things that are maybe part of the plan or the scheme on the ice, it's like he holds them to that same kind of standard, and you can't. Like, you have to be, regardless of what you want to think of yourself, being a perfectionist, you can't hold other people to that standard. There's a standard set by the team, the coach, the GM, and that's the standard that should be upheld, not necessarily your own internal one. So if JT Miller's getting upset at himself, that's fine. That's your own business. You can deal with that on your own. But man, Don't bring other people into your own expectations that maybe you hold to yourself and then project that onto other people. That's a delicate balance that needs to be had.
Frankie, over your career, you played as a third pair defenseman, as a seventh guy, as a call-up guy. The Vancouver Canucks are leaning on some guys here. Christian Wolanin, a 27-year-old AHL, NHL journeyman. Noah Juulsen, who's now 25 years old. Even Guillaume Brisebois, who's 25 years old, just got a contract extension this week. They're playing really well, actually. What's the key when you're thrown into that spot as an NHL defenseman? What's the key? What do you try and do to make sure you get through the game and you're not the guy on the wrong end of the puck in your net?
I will say this. These guys that have come up, whether it's Wolanin, Brisebois, Juulsen, don't you think they move the puck pretty well? Like, they're all pretty mobile. They all move the puck pretty well. It almost seems like it's an upgrade over the guys that were there early in the season, like Ekman-Larsson or Stillman. And it just seems like these guys, they should have been there the whole time. Like, that's not fair to say, I think. Like, Wolanin moves the puck really well. He skates well. Brisebois is a guy who's been in the system, but he has some puck moving ability. Juulsen is a guy who had a ton of upside early in his career and kind of got derailed by concussions. I'm watching these guys play and I'm thinking these guys could be there every single night. It doesn't seem like it's an issue for them. And like the cliche answer for a guy who gets called up maybe and you got to play on the third pair is, oh, you keep it simple. That's great. That's fine and dandy. So I've heard some coaches say you just take the first option, whatever your first option is. Well, how about you make the right decision? How about you take the right option? And that's what I see a lot of like these guys doing. And, you talk about that game last night against Anaheim maybe being a little bit of a boring game. Well, that has a little bit to do with Anaheim. It also has to do with the fact that Vancouver could break the puck out of their zone pretty well. And the other thing I kind of noticed is if they're moving it up to a winger, like I saw one play where I can't remember who it was, but someone got the puck up to Di Giuseppe on the wall. And maybe in the past, that would have been a scenario where the puck comes back into the zone. There's a disconnected pass and, they're trying to start all over again. It seemed like there was a little more of a plan as far as I'm under duress. I know this is option one. This is option two. I went with option two, and within 2 seconds, puck was 200 feet from your net. And it starts with the D-men that were moving the puck, but it also continues with players who are under duress and have a little more of a plan. But listen, I've been impressed with those guys. I played with Wolanin in the American Hockey League in Belleville, and at the time he was kind of getting called up to Ottawa and sent down. And just one thing about him, he sees the ice well, and he's not afraid to make passes and make plays that maybe you would think, oh, you're a call-up. Don't try anything too risky. It's not about trying things too risky. It's about making the right play at the right time, and I think that's what those guys have done well since getting called up.
And how about Wolanin, Frankie? I mean, this is the son of an NHLer, too. He said last night, or he said recently to, I believe it was Dan Murphy, he takes a moment every warm-up to sort of stop, look around, smell the roses, and, appreciate that he's in the National Hockey League.
Well, I was going to say, with regards to your point, too, Frankie, at 27, I hope he doesn't take the safe route. I hope he just makes the play that he thinks he should make at this age. Like, he's not trying to climb the NHL ladder anymore. He's 27. I think people have made their minds up on what Christian Wolanin is. I hope he just plays his game and has success.
I agree with you. And that quote that he shared with Murph about not taking a day for granted in the NHL, it's so true. And if you ask a lot of other guys that are in that situation, they would tell you the exact same thing. There's just something different about being in the NHL, pulling into the parking garage, going out for warm-up, all that stuff. And you really should cherish those moments. I know the guy well, and that's him being very genuine and honest, and it's very believable. And listen, there's a guy who had all kind of the upside with the Ottawa Senators as far as being in their future plans. And, he's worked hard to put himself back in the mix here with the Vancouver Canucks. And I mean, anytime you see a guy go down to the American League with a good attitude, put up good numbers, play quality hockey, and get called up, that's a success story. It really is. Regardless of how long he stays up with the team, it's a success story. So I'm happy for him, and I'm happy he shares that insight, because maybe there's some people who see NHL players and just think it's another day, another game, another arena. there's some players around the league, and him being one of them, who don't take anything for granted, and they're very grateful to be there.
When Filip Hronek is available to the Canucks, given how well Juulsen played, like Hughes is a kingmaker. Hughes makes whoever's on the right side look pretty darn good. And that's all due respect to Luke Schenn, who I think has revived his career to his own accord. But I think Hughes made it that much easier for Luke Schenn to do that. And Juulsen looks pretty good right now as well. Do you load up right now? And I mean right now, when the Canucks are hopefully contending in 3 years' time, yeah, you probably have them both on the same pairing and have like a real kingmaker top pair. But right now, do you put those two together, or do you say, oh, maybe Hronek can do the same thing with somebody on the left side?
I wonder, like, what do you have to lose by loading things up or trying something one game and changing it for the other game? Like, you
Right.
really have nothing to lose at this point. The thing the Canucks should be doing is try everything. Try Miller on the wing. Try him at center. I guess you can't put him on the
Information gathering,
like,
right?
You can't put him on the wing because you don't have enough center depth. I get that. But, like, on the back end, why not try Hronek and Hughes for a night? Why not try Juulsen? And you're just trying to see what you can do in the future. So when you get there at some point, if these are the players that are in the mix and you believe in some of these guys, it's like, okay, we've built some runway with this guy and that guy. We know how this looks, and you're not wasting time throughout the course of a season, or you're not tinkering with things. Like, now's the time. You're not going to get any worse, probably not going to get any better. I'd be like, if I'm a coach, as much as players like continuity and playing with the same players and all that kind of stuff, I hate using the word chemistry, so I won't use it. I think it's overused. But anyways, as much as players want that continuity with each other, it's like, now's the time to tinker and see what you want to do. I would be trying everything.
We had some fun with Dreger yesterday on this topic. More underrated by the national media, Pettersson or Hughes, national media guy?
Ooh, okay. This is a good one, by the way. And I did see this making the rounds yesterday. I don't know what Dreg said, but my answer is Quinn Hughes. More underrated by the national media. If
the defenseman goes with the defenseman, Blake, I'm stunned.
If someone doesn't know what EP is all about, and just the way he burst onto the scene as a rookie, like that first NHL goal was all over the highlight reels for months. And like, if you watch a Canucks game, they're both flashy, but it just seems like Hughes is a little more underrated. It really does. And I don't know if that's because he's a defenseman, but like, just some of the subtleties to his game, the edge work, the way he can kind of shake players off. It's almost like you need to watch him and isolate him. And even watching him in person would do it a little more justice with some of the things he does. Like, EP is well celebrated. And I don't know if he was in the top 50 last year when we did our NHL rankings, but I can guarantee you he's going to be in the top 50 this year with the season that he's had coming back. And but yeah, I don't know. Something about going with the defenseman makes sense as well, because I know being in that position, how hard it was to shake a guy off or make something look easy where you're under duress. And he does that all the time. And we really celebrate EP and the shot and the playmaking abilities. And, you know, I remember when we first came in, it was like EP versus McDavid head to head, right? Like that's the marquee thing. Like, okay, well, what about Hughes versus, right? Like, we never really talk about that. So for me, Hughes is a little more underrated.
I don't know that I would have projected that Quinn Hughes would, Makar's missed a few games, but so is Hughes. He's 11 points ahead of Cale Makar. And based on the season that we saw from Cale Makar a year ago, like, I just thought Cale Makar would be doing what Erik Karlsson is doing this year. And there's Hughes, he's tied for fourth in the league right now in points, ahead of guys like Fox and Makar.
Yeah, it's been really impressive. And like, the fact that he's doing it also with, like, listen, once this guy has Filip Hronek playing with him, which I think they should do, don't you think that kind of like activates him a little bit more as well? Like, he's going to have someone who can get him the puck, and maybe he's not going to have to do, he's not going to have to shake players off as much as he does. He'll just get the puck in a little more opportune spots, whether it's skating up the ice and not having to play with his toe caps facing the net as much. I just think there's more to come for Hughes, and he does a lot on his own. But just like, imagine if someone can ease the burden a little bit on him as well. I think you activate him even more. And listen, it's not linear. He's not not every season is going to be a Norris season. He's not going to be ahead of Makar every year, as you're seeing with Cale Makar the season he's had.
Right.
But not to say you're scratching the surface, but there's going to be more there when he plays with a partner who's a little more of his kind of puck-moving caliber.
Yep. Greg's voted Pettersson. Blake and I both voted Hughes. So you tell Darren he's been outvoted.
I will. And also,
3-1.
You mentioned that I played on the third pair and I was the seventh defenseman. I played a handful of games on the first pair throughout my NHL career, Matthew. A handful.
I didn't mean to sell you short, Frank. I didn't mean to sell you short.
Yeah, that's why it was only a handful, because it was right back to the third pair.
Way to go, Matt. Now I don't know if he's going to be back on Thursday next week.
Yeah. It's all right. So another triple bogey for me there, Blake.
Yeah.
Thanks, Frankie. You're a beauty. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
I hope.